collection of data. Okay, should be hitting. I want to welcome everybody to another study in the Word, and we want you to turn to 1 Timothy chapter 3 because we're going to finish up the qualifications for bishops and deacons today, at least try to in this session. And if I can do that, then this will be the last session, and we'll pick it up next week as we're going to do more. And next week we'll start with understanding the fivefold ministry. And we'll start with the evangelist ministry. So it'll be a perfect place to stop. I don't want to do one of those and then stop and just, it would be better if we picked it up next week. So 1 Timothy chapter 3, and I'm going to read again. This is a true saying. If a man desire the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. Verse 2, a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. And that's where we ended up, those two. Very good. I enjoyed that, actually. Thought that was real revelation. And now we're going to talk about not given to wine, which is pretty simple. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Not addicted or a drunk or an alcoholic, all right? Now, of course, today, we also must mention some other things. He's talking about, alcoholics or a drunk. But I also think that it's real important for you to understand that that's being intoxicated, so any intoxication would not be good for a bishop. In other words, if a bishop shouldn't sniff glue or sniff Pam in a sock, you say, what do you mean? Well, we've got people I've dealt with that are on all kind of stuff, including, bathing, bath powders and everything else. Today, we got a wide range, and you say, well, yeah, but a preacher, you wouldn't be doing that. Well, we've had several of them here recently that were very, very popular preachers, wrote books, had huge congregations, and were, basically smoking crack and got busted and everything else. So you got to mention this. Drug use of any kind, including, now listen to me, if you're on drugs for depression or whatever, or for mental illness or for any of bipolar and all that, I just don't think it's good for a bishop to be in ministry and be on these psychotic drugs. Now, maybe you say, well, that's being legalistic. Well, let me tell you something. Where do you draw the line? Because I've seen people on these psychotic drugs and stuff act pretty strange. If you have any experience at all in deliverance, and you're working with people that have been on psychotic medicine, and sometimes they come off of it, they act weird. They act strange. They have withdrawals. Sometimes they get very angry, and sometimes they're just completely different people than they really are. It's just wild. So it's tough to be a bishop and to have that kind of medication. Smoking pot. Today it's very popular for some preachers to say they smoke pot before they go out and preach. I just think that's just totally ridiculous. I used to smoke pot all the time when I was a kid, when I was a teenager later on. And I can tell you that it's very powerful. It opens the door to the devil. I'm telling you, people get delivered in our services all the time who've been smoking pot. And they have devils that have come into them because they smoke pot. So don't think it's something that doesn't have some open doors. It does. And even some prescription drugs and mental issues. So we don't want to be legalistic. I'm not saying somebody can't take some tranquilizers if they're prescribed for flying or there's a lot of, maybe you have some depression you've been through. I know for a season you have to, take some medication. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking addicted to it. I'm talking about somebody who has given themselves over to it or using it. Oxycontin's another thing, heroin and fentanyl and all these things. Boy, you say that doesn't really relate, does it, Pastor Tom, too much to preachers? Go to L.A., drive down the streets of inner city in Los Angeles, or any big city really, and you'll find out there's more churches than almost anything else. They're on every street corner, And you'll find out that most of the guys that pastor those churches, or women, use it to raise money. That's all it is, as much money as they can for their drug habits. So it does relate. And the Bible talks a lot about sorcery being a great problem, pharmaceuticals being a great problem in the last days. So we don't need to be given to wine. Okay? No striker, the next word striker. This is someone who lashes out, flies off the handle with anger all the time. Now, understand here, I understand that you can get angry. I get angry. Everybody gets angry. We shouldn't let the sun go down on our wrath. We're not talking about somebody who occasionally gets angry. There's things you should be angry about. And sometimes I know even my wife at times doesn't understand why I get angry at some things that I do. But God gets angry. And I get angry sometimes at stupid stuff people do, or just sin in general and the things that happen to people. I get angry about that. I don't like it. I get angry about some of the things politicians do and things like that. I can't help it. It's just wrong. So people are going to get angry. We're not really talking about that. We're talking about somebody who just can't control their anger. It flies off all the time. Maybe they need even some deliverance. We don't know. But someone who is combative, of course, with their fists, but also with their words. We don't need bishops that are combative with their words. We don't need bishops or overseers of churches that are argumentative and just, are getting into arguments all the time and trying to win the discussion. And I've seen them. I've seen preachers that, man, they were sharp and they were this and that. I got saved and went to a church. We moved and we went to a church in Central California. And when we went there, the Lord told me to go to that church. It was a little Assembly of God church. And the pastor there at that time was a good man. I know he loves God, but he wasn't a pastor. He should not have been pastoring that church. And ended up dying not too long after that in a plane crash or a car crash. I can't remember which. Because he opened the door to the devil because he should not have been doing what he's doing. And one of the things that he used to do is get angry. I can remember sitting there and we were doing an Easter play. And it was like the Last Supper, and I was dressed up. I can't remember which character I was playing. And it's the first time I'd ever done anything like that. And so we're all talking and laughing, and we weren't paying attention, and he's trying to get our attention, and he just smacks the table and screams at us at the top of his voice. And he would do that when he get upset. You can't be doing that if you're a pastor or a leader. I mean, he just screamed at us. So it's that type of thing. Someone who's argumentative all the time. You ever been around somebody that no matter what you say, they want to argue with it? They'll say the opposite, or they'll always come up with something else. And man, I can't stand that. It's just like, please don't say anything because you're going to argue with me. I don't want to argue. I want peace. How about you? And I think it's important. So always wants to argue. People like that, they always say the opposite, side in against what you say because they want an argument. Someone who likes to get in the last word. Someone who likes to get in the last word. You ever been around somebody who likes to get in the last word? Oh, there we go. Let's read the rest of this here. Getting in the last word. Gotta get in the last word. That's funny, isn't it? But there's a lot of people like that. So, no striker. Next one is not greedy, a filthy lucre. Now, this is important because it's talking about dirty money here. But, somebody says, well, money is all dirty. Money is the root of all evil. No, money is not the root of all evil. We need money. We have to pay the bills. We've got to use money. The love of money, though, can be a problem. That's for sure. And preachers should not do things and get money by wrong means. I know preachers who have opened up their churches. Somebody came to their church and asked them, can we do they had a pyramid thing they were doing. Oh, sure, let's all get involved in that. I saw it destroy the church. And really they found out that the pyramid scheme was illegal. And so the preacher is involved in a pyramid scheme. Not too long ago, I had a friend of mine. He called us all up, and we all went over there and somebody very respected preacher. And he was trying to get people to get involved in selling phones or something. And because we all loved him, we did it and found out it was illegal. So found out down the road it was a scam. Preachers can't get involved in scams. They can't obtain money in evil ways. That's dirty money. All right? Now, money is not dirty itself. The second it comes into your hand is it gets sanctified, especially if you're a tither and a giver. But there's a lot of preachers who have a problem with money. They really do. And they're always trying to figure a way to get money. Indecent gain in money. Not good. Then the next word is patient. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Patient. Not somebody who is argumentative. Again, that's what that word means. Somebody that's peaceful or a peacemaker. That's really what that means. So it's good if you're a bishop to be a peacemaker. When somebody starts going off, learn how to try to calm them down and stop it before it gets going too much. That's very important. Not a brawler, a fighter, or actually a bully or abusive or controlling. I've seen people that were bullies. I don't like bullies. I grew up with them. I traveled. My father was in the produce business, and he got promoted so fast that we kept moving all the time. And when I was a little guy growing up, man, I'd go to a school. It took a while to, when you go to school to make friends, you're the new guy. So we did it over and over. I have to go into the school, and then the bullies would pick on you. And you have to end up getting in a fight to get that taken care of. And got to the point to where I just go into the school, look for the biggest bully and attack. That way I didn't get picked on and that was over with. But bullies are no good. They're abusive, they're controlling, they hurt people. And most of the time bullies got real problems, and it's because of on the inside of them. They're like they are because they got bullied when they were kids or something. But you can't be like that. You can't be a brawler or a fighter or whatever if you're a preacher. You're not gonna want to throw down on somebody in the congregation. There's been times where I wanted to, but you can't do that. Then the Bible says not covetous. Covetous. Well, this is wanting things you're not supposed to have, or wanting things, lusting after things other people have. And one of the things I've noticed about preachers is they act stupid sometimes. I remember we had a wonderful man of God that came to town and had a convention down in Green Bay. And so my particular group was involved in this particular convention. And me and my wife, we drove our old car over there, and I didn't even sit down with the preachers because a lot of times I don't like to sit with them. There's reasons for that. But we came to this thing, and we turned around and we looked out of the most valuable person section came two preachers that we know, young preachers, dressed to the hilt, looked really prosperous. And we noticed that when they came into the meeting, they were driving in a limo. And you know what? They rented all that, or big, long cars, acting like they were something they weren't. And really, that kind of thing, preachers shouldn't do that. We don't need to be picking on people because of the kind of cars they drive, whatever. You don't judge people because of that kind of stuff. I remember specifically driving down the road with Ed Dufresne, who is a mentor of mine. And I said to Ed, we're driving in a nice van. I had a nice van for the kids. He says, this is real nice getting around this van. I said, yeah. I said, I just bought another car because I'm establishing a church out in Elko. And I said, it's a little car, it's a Hyundai. It doesn't even have air conditioning. I said, we drive it all the way out there because of gas and all this. He says, well, that's frugal and that's the right thing to do. He says, some preachers want to look good and they really don't have the means to do it, and that's not a good thing to do. And I learned that. It's true. We shouldn't be concerned so much about what people think about us. And some people are just covetous. They want all the good things. They want all the, everything that is supposed to be, everybody else wants. Keep up with the Joneses, Got to have a house. Got to have a bigger house. Got to have a car. Got to have a bigger car, and because they want to look good. They want to smell good. Get the best suits. Go into debt over it, Preachers need to watch that. Then there's another thing here. The next one is, one who rules his house well. This is interesting. This word means an expert at running a household, an expert at running marriage. We talked about that. An expert at running children. Actually, that's what it means. An expert at running finances. An expert at cleaning the home and the yard, paying bills on time, and things like that. I know that I have my associate pastor here who's helping me today with the camera and stuff, and he's excellent at fixing things around his house. I mean, anything goes wrong. He saves a lot of money that way. He learns how to do it. He'll Google it. I'm the exact opposite person. I'll make sure it gets fixed, but I'd rather pay for it. I can't stand doing that kind of stuff. But however you choose to do that, it needs to be done. You need to keep stuff running. You need to keep it up to date. Right now, my wife and I are considering remodeling our house a little bit. We're trying to do it step at a time because it's getting older. We've lived there for a long time now, and some things need to be upgraded. And that's what it is. It's doing it the right way. I don't want to get in debt over it, right? So I'm having to believe God for money, and we take it one step at a time. It's learning to run your household. How many preachers have lost their children? I can't tell you. It's difficult for a child to be in ministry because they see how people treat their parents, and it can leave a hard spot on the inside of them. Our daughter included saw that, a lot of that in Reno, and she's very protective of us because of that. When she needs to understand, and I've tried to talk to her about it, that it doesn't bother us. That when somebody does something, it doesn't trouble us like it does her, or maybe some of our other staff. They feel the same way. And I tell them we've had that happen to us so many times that it's like water off a duck's back, and it's not a big issue. Things that were a big issue to me 30 years ago don't mean much to me today, and that's the way that works. You just learn over a period of time that certain things aren't going to bother you, and that is the way it should be. So bringing up children's like that, you've got to be able to communicate with your children on several levels. Number one is raising children. You've got to, let the child know right off who's boss. Because when they're young, they're going to push you. And you got to get on that right away so they know who's in charge. So many children are in charge of the families nowadays, it's ridiculous. And I've seen preachers that their children basically were out of control. And you got to give that child a lot of love, but you also have to teach that child to respect. You got to discipline the child rightly. Sometimes you might even need to spank the child or give them a timeout here and there. People do it different ways. But I think it's real important for people to understand that you connect with your child not only as father or mother and not to push them to anger, but you also, and they need to know that you're father and mother and you're going to discipline and so on, but also you have to become a friend to your children. So there's that side. And it's like, so there is a time to be a friend. There's a time to do that as a parent and love them and get involved in their life and listen to them. I think one of the worst things a person does when it comes to raising children, especially when they get a little older, teenagers, is not listening to what they're saying. Because it may not mean much to you and you might blow it off and say, well, they'll get over that or whatever. But to them, it's their world. If they come home and they say something like, something happened at school, there was an issue, had a hard time, listen to that. It's real important because you don't know. There may be a real problem at school and you need to find out about it and find out what's happening there because it can to them be a major issue. How many children and teenagers have we lost to suicide because of bullying or being on the internet and people making fun of them and all that nowadays? And let me tell you something, whether you like it or not, Christians are targets for that kind of thing. My daughter, growing up in secular school, we had her in secular school for a while, then we homeschooled her. But while she was in secular school and even Christian school that we put her in for a while, she got picked on. She got picked on big time. And it hurt. And it was hard. And when they found out she was a preacher's kid and she didn't do certain things, it was hard. The rest of them were all drinking, doing this, running with the boys, but she didn't want to do that. My daughter was a virgin until she met her husband. That was the first man she was ever with when they got married. I know that's not the case with everybody that was my daughter, and she was set to do that in her way between her and God. But the point I'm trying to make is it was not easy for her growing up with a minister, a guy that's on the road a lot, and Mom would go with me. We'd leave her home with Mama Zita, her grandmother, who thankfully was there to help. And she felt at times rejected. She felt at times that, that we really didn't care, or whatever she was feeling. And I can understand that, but the truth of the matter is we never did feel that way. But we had to try to raise her up, and we did a pretty good job because she turned out good. But sometimes kids are going through things we don't understand. We need to understand, in their world, it can be a big deal. So we listen to them. Teaching children to be submissive, decent, obedient, and virtuous. That's very important. I see children go off down at the, Piggly Wiggly or somewhere where you're shopping, and because they didn't get the donut they wanted or the cookies they wanted, they fly off the handle and raise a holy fit, and it's nothing but the devil. And I see how they're controlling their parents by doing that. If they scream loud enough, they'll eventually get their way. And that's not the way it should be. And then the Bible says, not a novice. Not a novice. The word novice means a new plant. This being not a novice and getting into pride, at least they get into pride, is an important thing. If you put somebody in some kind of spiritual position too fast, pride can enter in. It happened to Lucifer. Destroy Lucifer, and it'll destroy people. And I did it when I was first in ministry. I didn't understand this. Sometimes I put somebody in a position too quick, and they get attacked by the devil, and they get slaughtered they just get bombarded, and they'd fall apart, and I didn't understand why, but I had put them in there in a position that they really weren't ready for. And that was my fault as a pastor. So you don't put novices in. A novice can be somebody that's a new Christian, but it can also be somebody that's new that come into your church because they don't know. People don't know them. I've seen a lot of preachers do this. They'll bring in somebody they don't know to work with them in ministry just because they hire them. And many times that's not good. It does work out sometimes, but I have a friend who did that 3 times. He brought in somebody he knew to be an associate pastor or youth pastor in his church, and every single one of them flopped, and it was a big hassle, and eventually ended up splitting his church and literally took his church over. So we don't want people amongst us that are ministering to be novices. The people need to know who they are. They need to be there for a while. I brought my associate on here full time. He'd been with me a long time, almost 20 years before that happened. And I have other people working with me. Before I put the stamp on them of pastor or whatever, it's got to be some time. I mean, quite a long time involved, watching them be faithful, proving them, so on and so forth. So it's important that we do that. Because pride is like somebody, man, you can't see it. If you got pride, you're blinded. It's like somebody sitting in a closet smoking a pipe and then filling all the cracks up with towels. You do that long enough and you can't see because the smoke blinds you. That's what the word pride means. It's being blinded like smoke, and people fall into that, and they fall into the judgment of the devil, the same thing the devil did. And that's a bad thing. People need to watch pride, and we don't need to be putting people into church positions just because they can play a guitar, or they can lead worship because they can sing. Well, you're doing that, you're cutting your own throat. I've told preachers that for years, young preachers. None of them hardly listen to you. And then they find out the hard way and call you 4 years down the road and go, you were right. I said, why didn't you listen to me at first? You got somebody who's got all this experience. Other people have told them that. For years and years and years, we all got this experience, We've been doing it for years. You find out the good, the bad, and the ugly about the situations. So why not learn and not do it in the first place? But see, they think they know better. Somehow it's going to work out for them. The people are nice. One of the nicest guys I ever saw that came to my church was a really nice guy. Everybody liked him. He was a really good guy. And he could play guitar and sing. And so eventually we put him on as part of the worship team, and he was fine. He was doing the worship and so on and so forth. Everybody liked him. He was very sweet. Well, one day I'm sitting there minding my own business, and one of my worship leader and one of the other younger guys in the church came over to me, and they said, Pastor Tom, we got to talk to you about something. I said, well, what is it? Found out this guy in the worship team, who was the nicest guy in the world, was hitting on him, trying to have sex. Well, you see, That's what you got to watch out for. Just because somebody's a nice guy doesn't mean they don't have motives that are not good. And so we didn't move him too fast, and it was exposed. Because if it would have not been exposed, we might have went along for another 2 years, 3 years. He might have got into a position of authority thinking everything was okay and found out he was doing the dirty dance with little boys or young men. And that was a real bad thing. So I'm thankful for that. Now, they need to have a good report on the outside. So one of the things a bishop has to do is be able to be known in the community. One of the things I like to do when I go out to eat, which is a lot, that's what Stella and I do for fun, is we will go to a restaurant and I tip big time. I tip big time. I like to tip big time, and when they see me coming, now in these restaurants, man, they want to fight over who's going to take care of us. And you know, some guys will go in there and they'll leave a tract on the table and a $1 bill for a tip and think they're doing a Christian duty. And I have a person in my church, 2 of them, that told me they were waitresses for many years, and they hated when Christians did that. They would leave them a tract, would leave them a $1 bill, and that was it. And they didn't like Christians or Christianity because of that. Of course, they were misjudging maybe, but nonetheless, you know, people shouldn't do that. What we should do is, if you're going to leave them a tract, leave them a big tip, then they'll read the tract, right? So that's important. Now, go down to verse 8 here. Likewise must the deacons be grave, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy of filthy lucre, holding the mystery of the faith in a pure conscience. And let these also be proved first, then let them use the office of a deacon, being found blameless. Even so, wives, be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. Let the deacon be the husband of one wife, ruling their children in their own houses well, for they have used the office of a deacon that well will purchase themselves a good degree. Many of those deacons will move on to other things, even bishops, and great boldness in the faith which is in Jesus Christ. Now, I want to finish this up mentioning the deacons because it's important. The first thing is deacons need to be proved, bishops need to be proved. The word proved there is a word that's used, means, actually, it's a word taken from, you know, somebody who is a gold or smither, where they would take gold and they put it at a certain temperature and the impurities would rise to the top and they'd scrape it off. Then they'd turn the fire up a little bit more. The impurities would rise up a little bit more and they'd scrape it off. And they do that the 3rd time and they would get all the impurities out, and the gold would be hard and the silver would be hard and the metal would be hard and used very well then without impurities. Because if the impurities are in there, like you make a sword out of metal and there's impurities in it, it'll break, it'll be brittle and it won't work. So that's what it means. So the deacons, and both the deacons, because the bishops must be deacons first before they become bishops, need to be proved. And that is a testing period for a certain amount of time where you watch somebody's life and you give them small tasks, watch how they handle the small tasks. Then as they go along, you give them a little bigger task, a little bigger task. Sometimes you actually give them things that you know are going to rub them the wrong way. See how they respond, because you see, it's all about character. Can they handle pressure? Can they handle this? Can they handle that? And so, likewise with the deacons. The word deacon means a servant. We're always going to be deacons even if we're bishops. I'm still a deacon today. I just serve in different ways than I used to. Maybe I used to be the janitor of the church, which I did at one time. Today, I am doing all the things I do, but I'm still serving. And to have that mentality of being a servant is extremely important, awesome, and important. We are always foremost servants. And sometimes servants have to lay down their lives, and lives get interrupted, and we have things happen to us we don't like. And man, I mean, you know, people do weird stuff. Sometimes they don't respect our days off. I remember when I first got into ministry, you know, I would always try to take off a certain day because I was preaching 14 times a week sometimes. And I hardly ever could take the day off because something would happen. And it was difficult and challenging. I did not go on a vacation for many years. For first vacation I can remember going on was to Disneyland or something. And I took my mother-in-law and I took my Stella's cousin that was living with us, and I took my daughter and went down. It was no vacation to me. I would take people somewhere. We would go on vacation, but I didn't have a vacation. My vacation was sitting around doing nothing. I didn't get one of those for years. It's always serving. Always serving. And that's the way we should be. We should be servants. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't take a vacation in time for yourself. I'm not saying that. We need to do that. I'm just saying ministry, Jesus was like that. Jesus would be tired. He would go to a place up on the mountain to rest, and they'd follow him up there. And then the next verse, you see he's ministering to people all day long. You can only imagine about Jesus having to pray for people. I mean, thousands of them. I don't know about you, casting out devils. What I know about casting out devils sometimes can take a long time. I'm sure it wasn't as long for Jesus as it would be for some of us, but still, nonetheless, there was a spiritual output on that, and you would get tired. Sometimes he'd have to take a nap, go up in the mountains and try to sleep. And sometimes all night long he would pray, and he wouldn't get any sleep, and things like that. So it's important that they learn how to be natural workers. Actually, the word is servants as ministers of love or slaves or natural workers. And that's important to be like that. Then it goes, be grave. What does that mean? Well, reverent, worshipers of God, life in order according to the heaven requirements, a representative of God's kingdom that is excellent, pure, true to their word, and shines a light like that. You need deacons and people in business and people that are working in your church that know how to handle people outside, shine the light, do good. Not double-tongued. What does that mean? Someone who says something but does another. You ever meet anybody like that? You'll have a lot of people like that over the years that'll come in, and you don't want them in ministry because they're saying one thing to somebody and then they're talking different, and they're saying one thing and they're not doing it, they're doing another. Not shifty double talkers, but do what they say and say what they do. Not an alcoholic, again, we already covered all that. Same thing with this, deacons. Holding God's mysteries in a pure conscience. In other words, holding on to the simple things of the gospel with a pure conscience. They don't have to be teachers to be deacons, but they need to at least know the basics. Amen. And proved, tested, again, going through that fire. And then they need to be proved blameless. Again, no place for the devil to come in. And there's two interpretations of verse 11 where it says, and their wives. I think it would be true bishops' wives would need to be these things. I think it's also true that deacons' wives would need to be, or their husbands, vice versa, okay? Because we know that we had woman deacons and woman bishops, and we'll talk about that later down the road in our sessions so you can see it. But they need to be grave worshipers, reverent, and not crazy and wild and out of control and all that kind of stuff. So whether it's actually a deacon's wife or it's a woman deacon, doesn't matter, same thing. A deacon's wife would have to be that way, and a deacon woman would have to be that way. So just look at it that way, because that's the way it is. Not slanderers. You know, women, a lot of times on that side of things, they like to slander and talk. And they like all this kind of talk about this and gossip. Can't be like that and be a deacon. The devil, actually the word slanderers is the word devil, or one who falsely accuses people, to divide people, involved in gossip, talking evil about people. We can't have that in ministry. And a lot of people in ministry are like that. Boy, they get together and they talk and they say, well, you need to pray for so-and-so, and then you ask them what it is, and the next thing you know, you got a whole long discourse about this person and all the things they're doing and all that kind of stuff, and that has no place in ministry and on your staff. Then it goes on and says, sober-minded, again, renew your thinking and emotions under control, logical thinkers, not given to hysterics. We are faithful in all things. They're on time. They don't make excuses. Man, I can't stand excuses. You know, Jesus didn't like excuses either. That'll get people out of ministry quicker than almost anything. They're on time. They don't make excuses. They do their work without complaint. They do an excellent job. They're able to take orders. They're able to work well with others. That's important. You can't be a deacon or a bishop and not work well with others, or able to take orders, or do things without complaining, right? and they do, that means to do excellent work. You want your people on your staff to do excellent work without having to be talked about it all the time. You know, you want them to clean stuff up without having to tell them to do it. Pick something up off the floor without having to tell them to do it. These things are all important. That's excellent people. Cares for people they're serving. Cares for the building they have. Takes care of the chairs. Takes care of the rugs. Wants to do that. Wants to have it look nice. That's all important. There's somebody that can totally be counted on. That's faithful in all things. All right. Rules their houses and their children well. We already went over all that. Well, if a deacon can do that, they buy for themselves, the Bible says, they buy for themselves a great prodigy. In other words, not only do some of them remain deacons and people remember them their whole lives, when they look back on their lives, they always remember the guy that was faithful in church, that did all those things and was a blessing to them. You know, it's a tremendous thing to be somebody that serves God like that in the church. And if it's a bishop, of course, then you remember that. But not only that, you'll find out in the book of Acts that many people started out as deacons, later on became bishops. And so there is those that are being trained to be bishops, and they do it really well, and they learn their lessons. God can move them on into bishops. And I think that, again, all bishops should be deacons, but I think that sometimes the best bishops are ones that started out as deacons, never thinking really about ministry, but because they were faithful, God all of a sudden dumped the mantle on them, and they became really good pastors or leaders. Well, I've done preached myself happy. Those are the qualifications for ministry. And again, I'm going to stop there because if I went on, then we would get into this, the fivefold ministry gift, and I want to do that all in one couple sessions, which will be next week. So I'll be back next week. I think it's Monday and Tuesday. Is that correct, Tim? Next week, starting at around 10 o'clock. We'll probably do the same thing. I have done, let's see, how many sessions have we done, Tim? 9 sessions in 2 days. Then tomorrow on Wednesday night, I'm going to be doing a session that's really good on the whole armor of God, starting off with your loins girt about with truth. What does that mean? Well, we're going to get into all kinds of different things about sexual sin, and that ought to be a real popular message. I'm sure that thousands of people will be watching that one, but anyway, we're going to do it anyway. And we're going to talk about how curses can come on people because of sexual sins and things like that. So it'll be interesting. Probably end up being a couple sessions I'll do on Wednesday nights. And then Sunday, we're going to have Easter, and we call it Resurrection Service. I don't like the name Easter, but Brother Tim will be doing that. We're going to have a special ordination service and a special membership. We got like 10 people or something we're doing, accepting as members as our church keeps growing, and it's going to be fun. Then the next week, what date is that, Brother Tim? The 24th, is that right? Right. Okay, April the 24th, our morning services will come on at about 10:30 because we do our worship with CDs, so we can't put that on about 10:30. But in the afternoon, at 1 o'clock, we're having a special deliverance session, and we're calling it a group deliverance. I was calling it a mass deliverance, but we don't have enough people to make it a mass, so we'll call it a group deliverance. And we have about 10 people that are specifically coming, maybe more, specifically coming to receive deliverance from demons. And that's going to be wild. I've never done a group one like that. I do them individually or on Skype or individual, and we're going to do that. So that's going to be over the internet. You're going to see it if you tune in. That'll be on all of our live streaming things. So write that down. That's April the 24th, 1 p.m. to sometime around 3. And I can't be honest with you, I don't know how long it's going to take, but we're going to have that. So if you know somebody that needs deliverance, or maybe you need it yourself, tune in. And, we're doing a lot of things around here, so get involved with us. Pray for us. If you want to become a partner, please do that. There's links to be able to give Go to our website, faithalifefellowship.org. I know I say it every time, but we got new people joining us because this is one active, powerful, awesome congregation that's doing things. We're not the largest congregation yet. We're growing, but it is, we're bearing fruit. You're talking probably an average of 200 or more people a week getting saved out of this congregation. And I'm not exaggerating. When you take and average it all out, that's what it turns out to be. So this is a fruitful congregation. The teaching is different than most people teach, as you well know. The things I deal with are a little bit different. And I believe it's important for the body of Christ to hear the messages like we had this week, especially if they're going to be in ministry. So please help us. We would appreciate it. We need that. We need 1,000 partners to stand with us. And if you have any prayer requests, or maybe you need deliverance, we got forms to fill out on our website that you can get. And if you can get into a service or let us know about that, we'll try to serve you if we can. We can't do everybody. If you live too far away, but maybe we can refer you to somebody or something. But anyway, we love you. We appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining me and bearing with us. God bless you. Until next time, this is Pastor Tom.